Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. TIE TMS equips brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history coverage on a single screen. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, visit tiesoftware.com/battlestation. Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we're covering all things heavy vehicle cybersecurity. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on FreightWaves.com/checkcall if you haven't already. Today we are welcoming Joe Orr, the Chief Operating Officer at the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I am very excited about today because, as I was telling you earlier, longtime fan of the NMFTA as a former LTL person, big fans. But before we get too far into kind of the cybersecurity part of things today, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you got started at the NMFTA?
Yeah, sure. So I originally got involved in the transportation industry. Actually, I'll date myself a little bit. Um, Back in Y2K, I was in a different industry, and I was always interested in IT. So I was taking some classes to get my MCSE and my CCNA. And someone asked me if I wanted a summer job helping prepare company for for Y2K. And so I was a QA person testing for Y2K, which, if you remember, everybody was afraid, hey, what's going to happen when you flush the toilets? But there was a lot of people concerned about what was going to happen in the trucking industry on the onboard computers. And so I was part of the test team back then for Eaton Corporation. And so I would come in and just test telematics devices and what would happen for Y2K. That ended up turning into a full time job. And it was an industry that I thought, hey, I'm in IT. This is kind of fun. I'll do it for a few years. Then I'll go on to do something different. But it became an industry that I really enjoyed. And so I went from QA and IT into operations. And so really, 25 years has gone really fast. And so I started following NMFTA, and I had some friends that went over to NMFTA and really started to look at what they were doing. And so that was cybersecurity, digitalization, classification. And, two of the things that really appealed to me was, number one, their mission. And the mission is giving back to the industry. And I thought that was really important. That's something that's really important to me. Number two is the digitalization. They're going paperless. That's something that, with the standardization of the industry, no one else was doing. And that was very important. And then the give back to the industry also is the cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is important both on the asset side with the trucks, but also on the back end. And so, here's an organization that, again, wasn't asking for anything. Just not only on the LTL side, but also on the truckload side, was like, hey, we're here. What can we do? We're going to sponsor research. We're going to partner with academia. We're really going to get back to the industry. So I had partnered or reached out, and they were looking for a COO position, and the timing was perfect. And so, began discussions, and it just was a perfect fit, I think, on both sides. And really, the rest is history. So I've been here about 6 months. Really feels like, in some ways, I started yesterday. It's really been a good experience. So really learned a lot, and really help push the cybersecurity agenda.
I mean, as someone who has directly benefited from the NMFTA giving back to the industry, specifically as someone who lived in the Classit program forever and ever, I think that you guys have done a great job of fulfilling that part of it. And I could not be happier that you guys even exist and are so committed to everything. But speaking on that research and, cybersecurity part of things, you guys just released this report kind of detailing some trends that are happening in trucking cybersecurity. I mean, feels like every other day, or maybe every other day, maybe like once a month, we hear about some trucking company or some freight brokerage or something getting hacked or, potentially being a victim of ransomware. So, what are some of those key trends that are happening in cybersecurity that, everyone should be aware of for 2024 and kind of the next year or so?
Yeah, a lot of things we did cover in the cybersecurity report that we did for 2024, but I want to recap that and then mention a few others. So, the first one you mentioned is the ransomware. We only hear about the big ones, but there are smaller ones that happen. So, ransomware happens every day. Ransomware is becoming a bigger and bigger issue because it's easier and easier to do. The people that do it in a lot of cases are nation states, and they do their research. These are people that it's organized. It is people that that's their main job. How many people can they hit? Then once they hit them, they do the research. What's their gross profit? What percent can we go after? How big of a fish is this? And so, it's very organized. A lot of people think, oh, it's just, you see the picture of the guy with the hooded sweatshirt, in the basement. That's not who's doing this. These are very organized people, and it's the ransomware that's the number one thing. And sometimes you just don't hear about it because they don't talk about it or they don't report it. But number one is the ransomware. I think number two is API security. And so, one of the things in the trucking industry is data. One of the things NMFTA does, of course, is the digitalization standard, which is great. But there's so many TMS providers, and everybody goes to different systems for data. And how do they do that? They do that through APIs. And so API security is a big one. And so, how they do that, how they connect, those are all points of vulnerability. So you may have the most secure network in the world, but if you connect to another network through your APIs that's not as secure, all of a sudden you are vulnerable. And so that's a big deal. Then I think the third one that I want to make mention of is something that was in the news last week, and that's the broker and carrier fraud. And so FMCSA just launched a broker and fraud and identity theft division that focuses on that. And that's become a bigger deal because people are actually taking someone's USDOT number when they're not authorized to do so and stealing freight. So not only are they not paying for the freight, but then they're stealing the freight and actually acting like they're a carrier. And so that's why FMCSA is involved in that. So I think those are the three biggest things that we're hearing about from our members, and that we're hearing about from the trucking community. So those are three areas that we're really focused on.
I think that those are three areas that are very, very crucial because it's like you said, you can't go more than 5 minutes in a conversation with someone without hearing about, oh, so and so got affected by fraud or a theft or something like that. It's just becoming so commonplace that like the second you try and go, okay, well, we've protected ourselves here, well, then suddenly another door over here opens and you're like, well, I don't even know how to begin going about protecting that, or I have this other vulnerability, and it's kind of like you're always a step behind, just playing catch up. You're just trying to tread above water, and unfortunately that's how it is. Like, you can have all the phishing email tests and the best email policy in the world to not click on links, but at the same time, like, where there's a will, there's a way, unfortunately. And it's and all, like you said, all I can think of is the guy that's sitting there pressing all the buttons on his keyboard trying to hack into something, when in reality that's not actually how it happens. But it's just more comforting to picture that type of thing.
It is. Exactly. And the people doing it are getting smarter and smarter. And the emails that you get, I can remember even last year, you look at an email, it had spelling errors. You could tell it was someone that probably wasn't from this country that wrote it. It was obvious. And now it's like, I'll get some and I'm like, oh, is this legit? And I'll look at it for a few minutes. And so, and a lot of this is because of AI. They're getting smarter and smarter, more sophisticated. They're able to hit the masses. And so, I've given the story before. My dad's older, and I know a lot of times our first few minutes of a conversation, he's like, "Hey, I got the following emails. Are these legit?" No, delete, delete, delete. Because it's hard to tell what's legit and what's not. And I know my daughter, she's in college. She got an email asking for her social security number, and I'm like, no, no, don't do it. And I think it really is legit, but I was like, no, do not reply to the email. Call the person, verify it. And she's like, Dad, you're paranoid. I was like, you have to be paranoid, no matter what, because you just can't. It's that zero trust. You cannot trust anybody. And so, it's kind of sad, but when you go through, and that's what you have to do, you have to go through all that training. You really have to incorporate that mindset that this probably isn't legit, because again, the people sending the emails are getting better at it and smarter and smarter.
So my mom taught me. She's worked in accounts payable for a, a very long time. She would not be happy with me saying how long she's worked in it, but she has always said that, when like anytime someone, the vendor management, when a vendor says, hey, we have changed our banking information because maybe we got hacked, or it's just, we're changing our banking information. She said that she implemented a system where, okay, well, if you're changing your banking information, you notify me on letterhead. Okay, but I'm going to still call my point of contact at that place and say, hey, did you actually change it? Because that's how, because she's like, I just need that second point of verification. And there's been times where they've gone, no, we didn't change it. And she's like, okay, well, I have a letter here on your letterhead with like a forged signature saying that like you have changed your banking information. So I think you guys just got hacked, or like you're trying to like someone's trying to, impersonate as you. And they're like, okay. And so she's like, okay, this policy is staying. We're verifying everything. And that's something that, I was able to take to like organizations that I worked at of like, hey, how are we double checking this? And they were like, we're not. Like, we're just, should we be? And I was like, I mean, probably. But it's just something, it's just that casual heavy dose of, I just need a second set of eyes on it, or I need to double check on it. And that, I mean, I used to forward any suspicious emails to IT and saying like, can I open this or not? And they were like, no, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I had the same thing happen to me a couple of years ago. Accounts payable called me and was like, "Hey, why did you ask to change your direct deposit when you can do it through the portal?" I'm like, "I didn't." Well, here's somebody had set up an account through an online bank and tried to redirect my deposit. And then the next day, I get a call from my parents. They're like, "Hey, you got a thing in the mail from a bank." And I'm like, "Let me guess." And I gave the name of the bank. They're like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" Um, and they did it without, they just did it without any of my information. And they were trying to redirect my direct deposit. And, luckily she called me and said, she knew better. So, having policies like that in place is definitely now needed, because again, they're getting smarter and smarter and how they go about this.
I think one of the biggest things also that I know no one wants to admit and say, okay, well, we've been a victim of fraud, or this specific instance happened to us. Like no one really wants to be the one to admit that like they got. But at the same time, by kind of sharing those stories and sharing what happened, it makes the industry better and the industry stronger. And yes, it sucks that it happened to you, but by sharing that, you can stop it from potentially happening to someone else, thus almost kind of reducing the risk of it happening again, or happening on a broader scale. But that's my 2 cents, is just everybody kind of needs to share all their resources to say, okay, we gotta try and stop this where we can.
That's it. Yeah, that's a great point. I did a speaking thing at a conference in Vegas, and I kind of went way off script, which I know makes my marketing department very nervous. But I said, listen, no one talks about these hacks. There's been one company, and it was Estes, that kind of broke protocol and talked about it. And kudos to those guys for doing that. But they stood up like, yeah, we got hacked, and this is what happened. And I'm sure their lawyers are like, no, don't do that. But you know I I know there's been pushback. We have made some efforts, and we're still trying to um, get together. Some of the big carriers, some of the small carriers get together every quarter and talk about things like pen tests, talk about hacks, and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody, because a lot of the industry shares the same technology, and so a lot of lessons learned for one may be lessons learned for the other. And the industry, one of the great best things about this industry is they do share. And that's the thing, I always was amazed. They may be competitors, but when you get them at the same table, they share best practices, they share technology, they're really good. I went to a conference with CIOs, CTOs, and here this was mostly LTL, and here there's competitors, and they're sharing best practices. Now, the sales guys go head to head against some of the in the same areas, but they're sharing best practices. The technical people were, and but in cyber, like you said, that there's almost like a level of embarrassment, and there really shouldn't be. I mean, we are all susceptible to it. Like I said, somebody did it to me. I can't be embarrassed about it. I think how many 16 million people got impacted by the latest thing at AT&T. You know, it wasn't our fault. You know, all of us are going to be impacted by a cybersecurity issue at some point, if we haven't been so already. And so the best thing we can do is talk about it, to educate other people, to be proactive about it. And so, I encourage everybody to talk about, hey, what are the lessons learned? How can we prevent it? And talk about what did we do when it happened to us, because it's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a plan for the worst, hope for the best type of situation where, just like in a fire drill, you want to know where your exits are, how to leave the building, how to get out safe, how to contact those that can help you, but you never want to actually have to do it. You never want to have to say, okay, well, my building's literally on fire. Better do that. But I think that if you kind of have those guiding principles, and then also create that environment that says, okay, well, if something happened, if you did make a mistake and click on some link, or if maybe you did authorize someone's payment to change, but just have that environment where it's okay to like say, okay, well, I made a mistake, or own up to something instead of hide it. Because if everyone just kind of come cleans and says, hey, this is exactly what I happened, this is exactly what I did, it potentially might have caused the problem or something like that, I think that's going to go a lot farther than someone who just tries to hide it and make the problem worse for everybody. Which is, just make a nice environment for people. You don't need to have a crazy work environment.
I think we all learn that as if we have kids, or when we're young, we all teach our kids the cover up is way worse than the original crime. Just admit to it, and and let's fix it.
I guess, is there anything that a specific carrier, broker, shipper that they can do to, like, is there any like one thing that you're like, oh, if you don't have XYZ, this makes you super susceptible, or this is going to make you more of a target? Is there any one thing, or is it just kind of like if I throw it at the wall, whatever sticks, I'm like, as a criminal, I'm going to go look at and see.
I think number one is training. You have to invest in training in your employees. No matter what size carrier you are, you have to invest in training. I've been in a lot of meetings, a lot of conferences where some of the small SMB carriers or medium sized carriers have said, oh, they're just going after the big guys. Nah, they're going after everybody because, like I said, you know, you only hear about the big guys, but they're sending these emails to everybody. And it doesn't matter your size because they're going after a percent of your gross revenue. And so the biggest thing you could do is train and make sure your employees know that, hey, don't click on the link. To your point, if you have questions, send the link to your IT department. Cybersecurity is an investment, and not everybody has a cybersecurity team, but everybody's got an IT team. So, send that to cybersecurity. And then if you are a small carrier, part of that training is, I'll give a plug to CISA. We've done a lot of partnering with the government agencies, and CISA is one of the best that we've worked with. A lot of people don't know CISA will come in and help do penetration tests with you. They'll help create tests that, hey, if I do get hacked, what do I do? What government agency do I reach out to? So part of that training is also working with CISA to understand your vulnerabilities. And so I think the biggest thing is training and then working with an agency like CISA to make sure you are prepared. So that would probably be the I know you asked for one, but those would be the two biggest things that I would do is work with CISA and train.
So, what you're saying is that training that happens every year about how IT tells you to change your password, you should actually be paying attention to it.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, when you get that training, everybody kind of rolls their eyes. Oh my God, I've been through this so many times. But it is, it is important. It is important to reinforce it. I know when I started in MFTA, the first thing I had to do as part of my orientation is I had to go through the training. But it is important. I know that I was with one of my employees at a meeting off site, and he actually got a call, and he was a brand new employee, only been with us like 6 weeks. He's like, "Hey, Joe's out, but he needs you to, I think, get gift cards or something like that." And the guy had just looked on LinkedIn and assumed who he worked for, and the guy hung up and said, "Okay." And he looked at me, he goes, "Do you know anything about this?" I was like, "Oh my God, how, and he knew what to do, and it was part of the training. But yeah, that training is very important. And, especially in this industry, you've got people on the road, you've got people with telematics devices, you've got people connecting to, a lot of times open hotspots, you got people at truck stops, you've got owner operators, you've got, mobile assets. And so you really got to make sure you train those people. You train everybody. It can't just be the back office staff. It's got to be the drivers also, because the drivers could get some sort of virus and bring it back to the back office. So you got to make sure you train everybody, including the drivers.
Absolutely. And some of that stuff can also just be like really straightforward. Like I know here we had at FreightWaves we had a string for a while of people of like fake numbers texting us as Craig Fuller. And he had said in our like company messaging system, like, I will never text you. Like I will never text you. I will always be using official FreightWaves communications to do that. And so something as straightforward as that, because there's sometimes where you see it and you're like, this is a very obviously a scam message. But other times I'm like, wait, there's actually like no spelling errors and there's commas places. And I'm like, okay. But I think even something as simple as like, hey, just know that like we're never going to ask you to go buy a gift card. Like we're never going to ask you to go do that. And we're never going to text you or call you about it. Like it's always going to come through very official channels. So I think even something as simple as that is game changing.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So, that being said, we've covered a lot of ground today, but Joe, we have one more question for you. And it is arguably the most difficult question you might get asked today. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Yes! I'm so excited. I am also team hot dog is not a sandwich, but some people have some very strong opinions on it. But I'm glad that you already see the light and you know that it is in fact not a sandwich.
No, not a sandwich.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If someone wants to contest your sandwich as a hot dog sandwich opinion, or if anyone has any questions on kind of, where to start for cybersecurity or double checking that they are protected, where can they find you outside the show?
They could definitely reach out to us on our website at nmfta.org. We've got a cybersecurity section where we've got white papers. We've also got the report that you made mention. We're also on LinkedIn where we publish a lot of our information. And we've got a cyber security conference coming up in October where we will have a lot of really important guest speakers, and we'll be doing tabletop exercises and talking about cybersecurity.
I absolutely love that. You guys heard it here first. Joe's DMs are open, and so slide on into them. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, appreciate it.
You can find Check Call the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves shows. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.